Mars, a glorious celestial body that has a red, beautiful glow. Mars is one of the most talked about planets and has piqued the interest of scientific and technological minds. Our desire to study, learn, research, and explore Mars has been going on for decades. Recently, big players such as Elon Musk and his company SpaceX have been interested in not only exploring Mars, but potentially colonizing it. Space agencies around the world have tried to learn as much as they could about Mars by sending up orbiters, landers, spacecrafts, and even rovers. The journey of Mars exploration started with flyby spacecrafts from the USSR in the 1970s, all the way until today when we have rovers venturing over the terrain. Galileo Galilei looked through his telescope and was able to identify Mars as a planet in 1610. Ever since, astronomers, scientists, and researchers have been determined to learn as much as they could about the rusty planet. During the infamous space race between the USSR and the United States, the USSR was able to launch several spacecrafts to do flybys of Mars. Several of them were able to take a few pictures of the planet and send them back to Earth. Some of their missions failed, and one was even lost completely. In 1971, the Soviet Union achieved the sought-after milestone of finally getting a spacecraft to enter Mars's atmosphere. But it ended up turning into a crash. The first ever spacecraft to have a gentle landing on Mars was Mars 3 sent by the USSR. However, it only survived on the planet for a short time. Many people at this point, according to images sent back to Earth, thought that Mars was full of craters and resembled that of the Moon. This was proven not to be the case when NASA was able to land Mariner 7 on Mars. Mariner 7 was launched on May 30th, 1971, and actually arrived at Mars during a terrible dust storm that surrounded the planet. Once the dust storm settled, the spacecraft was able to pick up the tops of dormant volcanoes and a huge rift, later named Valles Marineris. After a year and a half of orbiting around the planet, it returned 7,329 photos. Over the course of the next couple of years, the USSR made several attempts to land on the Red Planet, but all of them ended up in failure. The spacecrafts would either be destroyed on impact or stop working several days into its journey. NASA started the Viking program in 1976. Both the Viking 1 and the Viking 2 were launched. The orbiters continued to perform operations overhead while the landers did their work on the surface. It was the longest mission up to that point. The spacecrafts were able to send back a lot of important data and uncovered new discoveries. For example, they found material on Mars that reflected material that we have on Earth, meaning some of the meteors that landed on Earth were likely from Mars. This was a mission that people were convinced we were going to uncover alien life, but NASA was unable to confirm the presence of microorganisms on the planet's surface, at least what they have told us. USSR then switched to Russia, and the United States tried multiple missions, but they ended up being failures. The next successful mission was from NASA in 1997, which has been named the Sojourner rover. Sojourner marked a huge advancement in the exploration of celestial bodies. It was a pioneering rover because it was the first wheeled vehicle to cover the surface of Mars. It was able to travel and navigate the terrain and conduct close-up studies of the rocks and soil on the planet. The first Mars rover set up the foundation for other rovers to drive around on Mars. One of the most significant discoveries was made by the Mars Global Surveyor that arrived on Mars on September 12, 1997. NASA kept extending its mission until they lost contact in 2006. During its time, it was able to map the red planet from pole to pole, and it was the first time that NASA was able to see there was evidence Mars used to have water. There were gullies that looked like they were formed by moving liquid, and there were even traces of hematite, a component that forms in water. Starting in 2001, Mars began getting more and more robotic visitors. NASA launched Mars Odyssey on March 7, 2001, and it is still continuing its voyage. Through its time on Mars, it was able to send back over 1 million images. Some of the images have included caves. According to the images, there have been 7 entrances to caves found on Mars. In 2004, NASA was able to successfully land 2 more rovers, Spirit and Opportunity. Both rovers made quite a bit of a contribution to understanding Mars's history and unearthing evidence that showed past water presence, which was already suspected on a previous mission. Unfortunately, a sandstorm occurred in 2018, which ended the mission. The mission that has gathered the most data is a spacecraft that was launched on August 12, 2005 by NASA. NASA launched Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, and it is still orbiting to this day. It has been distinguished by its exceptional data return that has surpassed all of the cumulative data from every previous Mars mission. it has been able to transmit high-resolution data which has allowed us to learn a lot about the red planet. On August 4, 2006, NASA was able to send up Mars Phoenix, which was a lander that reached Mars on May 25, 2007. It quickly made a groundbreaking discovery when it detected subsurface water ice. Unfortunately, the lander wasn't equipped to withstand the winter on Mars and NASA lost contact. Mars gets to about -190 degrees Fahrenheit during its winter time, and the lander wasn't ready for it. NASA sent up another rover, Curiosity, in 2012. It was successfully landed within Mars' Gale crater. Its goal was to see if there was any life that used to be on Mars. Although no life was reported, Curiosity did uncover more evidence that water once saturated the planet. There was also the detection of methane on the surface. Curiosity also unearthed organic compounds within the crust. Curiosity is still on Mars to this day. On May 5, 2018, NASA was able to send up Mars InSight lander to the planet and landed on November 26, 2018. The goal was to explore the planet's internal composition. Its primary goal was to figure out the interior. However, the lander was unable to penetrate the subsurface. Apparently, it was a lot more firm than they had suspected. Because of the dust coating its solar panels, the mission ended on December 20, 2022. Since Curiosity was such a successful mission, NASA was inspired to send up Perseverance. The rover was able to accomplish an amazing landing in Mars' Jezero crater on February 18, 2021. The goal of Perseverance is to see if we can detect any indication of past or present life. One of the most interesting advancements in technology was the use of an interplanetary helicopter named Ingenuity. The helicopter is able to perform aerial flights on Mars even through a dust storm. So far, it has made 55 flights. Mars is a fascinating planet, and we feel like we have so much more to learn. Many people believe that there was or is life on Mars. Some even believe that scientists have discovered life on Mars, but we haven't been let in on the secret. Whatever you believe, we know that there is so much about this planet that remains a mystery. If there is one thing that we have learned from past missions to Mars, is that it is not easy. There have been plenty of failed missions where the spacecrafts went missing, exploded, or couldn't withstand the unforgiving terrain of Mars. We have a long way to go before we should start considering colonizing Mars. Although there seem to be a lot of hurdles in the way, you can never count out motivated scientists. The future looks bright for Mars explorations. It is anticipated that technology will become more advanced and sample returns will be more prevalent. Ultimately, people want to know if life was ever on Mars, and if we could ever live on Mars. At least that is what Musk is patiently waiting to figure out. Sending humans to Mars doesn't seem like a question of whether or not we are going to be able to do it, but when. People within the astrophysics community have stated that the first step is to figure out if we can colonize the Moon, and that will prepare us to be able to colonize Mars. NASA says, with more demand for access to the Moon, we are developing technologies to achieve an unprecedented human and robotic presence 240,000 miles from home. Our experience on the Moon this decade will prepare us for an even greater adventure in the universe, human exploration of Mars. NASA has made it quite clear that one of these days they aren't just going to send up a rover, they are going to send up a person. We are all excited to see where technology takes us in the next years. We are anxiously waiting and wondering about Mars, and can't help but think, what will NASA do next? Don't forget to like the video and subscribe. If you were in charge of a Mars mission, what would you name it, and what would be its primary objective? What do you find most fascinating about Mars? Is it the search for signs of past life, the potential for future colonization, or something else entirely? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on our next trip into space.